Westow Hill, South London. Approximately 3:39 a.m., the quiet of the neighborhood was suddenly shattered by a series of emergency calls reporting a knife attack. Minutes later, police and paramedics rushed to the scene. On the pavement lay a man motionless in a pool of blood, his body riddled with stab wounds. Paramedics immediately began resuscitation efforts, trying to revive him, but all efforts were in vain. The victim was pronounced dead at the scene. As the area was cordoned off and investigators began collecting every last detail, a question quickly arose. Who committed this attack? And more importantly, what happened on Westow Hill just minutes before the first calls for help were made? After the victim's identity was confirmed, investigators identified the deceased as Kamal Cameron Williams, 31, also known as Kamal Cameron. Judicial records showed he had a prior conviction in 2018 for aggravated assault and drug-related offenses. However, at the time of the incident, investigators had not indicated whether these convictions were related to the attack. While forensic experts continued their work at the scene, the investigation quickly shifted to identifying those suspected of involvement. Shortly afterward, 3 men were charged with murder. They were Isaiah Adio Weathers, 23, Amari Auguste Francois, 21, and Ellis Shakim, 23. Up until the charges were made public, authorities had not disclosed the occupations of the 3 defendants, nor had they revealed their relationship to Kamal Cameron Williams. And that was the next big question investigators had to answer. What connected these 4 people in the final hours before the crime occurred? To understand what happened that morning, we first need to look at where it all began. Crystal Palace is an area in South London known for its bustling shops, restaurants, and bars, especially on weekends. Westow Hill, where the crime occurred, is one of the busiest streets in the area. Even after nightfall, it remains a popular spot. Groups of friends leave bars, diners, finish late dinners, and traffic continues to flow. That's why, when cries for help rang out around 3:39 a.m., many people witnessed the initial chaos and immediately called emergency services. In just minutes, a street that was usually crowded at night had become the scene of a murder, cordoned off by police, ambulances, and investigators. What no one knew at the time was the investigation had only just begun. As investigators began verifying the victim's identity, they quickly realized that very little information about Kamal Cameron Williams' personal life was publicly available. There were no interviews, no notable professional records, and little information on social media that could help to portray him in his final days. What authorities could confirm came primarily from his judicial records. According to publicly available documents, Kamal Cameron Williams had been convicted in 2018 in connection with aggravated assault and drug-related offenses. However, until the murder investigation was launched, police had not indicated whether these prior convictions had any connection to the attack that occurred on Westow Hill Street. This means investigators have to start almost from scratch, tracing every relationship, every witness, and every piece of evidence to find out what really happened in the final hours before Kamal Cameron Williams' death. At this point, the case has a major catch. There were no clear public warning signs before the attack. The only thing confirmed is that Kamal Cameron Williams had a prior conviction in 2018. But police haven't released any evidence linking this record directly to the 2026 murder. Nor has there been any publicly available information about personal conflicts, disputes, debts, group conflicts, or specific motives between the victim and the 3 defendants. Therefore, instead of fabricating an unproven story, the red flags of this case lie precisely in the information gap. A man was attacked in the early morning on a still bustling street. 3 people were subsequently prosecuted. But what brought them to the same location at the same time has not been fully disclosed, and it is this gap that makes the central question of the case even more weighty. Was this attack the result of a pre-existing conflict or a sudden confrontation in the night? To date, investigators have not released precise details of what happened in the final minutes before the attack. It is unclear whether the encounter between the victim and the accused was accidental or premeditated. There is also no confirmation of who initiated the confrontation or what escalated the situation into a deadly attack. All that is known is that, in a very brief moment, an encounter ended with Kamal Cameron Williams collapsing in Westow Hill with multiple sharp object wounds. This is where the investigation shifts from processing the crime scene to seeking answers. What happened in the missing minutes of this picture? At approximately 3:39 a.m., the quiet of Westow Hill was shattered by a series of emergency calls reporting a knife attack. Minutes later, police cars and ambulances arrived at the scene. In the middle of the street, Kamal Cameron Williams was found severely wounded by a sharp object. Medical personnel immediately began on-site treatment, attempting to preserve any remaining signs of life. Despite their efforts, Kamal Cameron Williams was pronounced dead at the scene. In that instant, the scene was quickly sealed off. Investigators began collecting every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and every piece of security camera footage in hopes of accurately reconstructing what happened before the initial calls for help were made. A man had lost his life, but the answers about who, why, and what truly led to his death remain fragmented, and the investigation must continue to unravel them. Immediately after Kamal Cameron Williams' death was confirmed, the Westow Hill area was sealed off. Forensic experts worked through the night for hours, documenting the scene, collecting evidence, and preserving all possible materials for the investigation. Simultaneously with the scene investigation, investigators began reviewing all security camera footage in the area. Cameras from shops, smart doorbells, dash cams from passing vehicles, and any images that might have captured the minutes before and after the attack were collected to reconstruct the events. Police also appealed to anyone present at Westow Hill at the time of the incident, or anyone possessing relevant images or videos to come forward and provide information. However, to date, many crucial details of the investigation have yet to be released. Authorities have not yet released the content of the CCTV footage, confirmed the specific type of weapon used, or announced the results of forensic examinations such as DNA, fingerprint analysis, phone data, or location data. This suggests that the investigation is not only focused on determining what happened at the scene, but also on answering the more crucial question: what sequence of events led to the deadly attack on Westow Hill in the early hours of that morning? In many true crime cases, the interrogation phase is often where lies begin to surface. But in the Kamal Cameron Williams case, to date, police have not released any interrogation videos, official statements, or inconsistencies in the defendant's testimonies. This means we cannot reconstruct the interrogation, attribute the statements to anyone, or speculate on what they told the police. What can be said with certainty is that the three men have been charged and the case has moved to criminal proceedings. From here, the focus is no longer on what was said in the interrogation room, but on what the prosecutor can prove in court. What evidence led authorities to believe that the three defendants were involved in the death of Kamal Cameron Williams? Initial findings from the investigation confirm that Kamal Cameron Williams died from injuries inflicted by a sharp object. This is the only cause of death that authorities have announced at this time. However, many crucial details in the forensic report remain undisclosed. Police have not released the number of injuries sustained by the victim. The exact time of death, as determined by the forensic pathologist, has also not been made public. Furthermore, other in-depth examination results related to the autopsy have not been released in the investigation file. This means that many important conclusions of the case are still being withheld for use in the legal proceedings. And it is from these forensic results that prosecutors will have to prove in court what happened in the final moments leading to Kamal Cameron Williams' death.
To date, the case has not reached a final court ruling. Three men, Isaiah Adio Weathers, Amari Auguste Francois, and Ellis Shakim, have been charged with murder and are undergoing legal proceedings under the English justice system. This means no verdict has been reached yet, and all accusations will continue to be verified through hearings and trials. During this stage, the prosecution is responsible for presenting compelling evidence to substantiate the charges, while the defense has the right to counter and defend its client. Until the court delivers its final verdict, the case continues to be reviewed according to legal procedures. Only when the trial concludes will the public know whether the missing pieces of the case truly fit together, also not been made public. Furthermore, other in-depth examination results related to the autopsy have not been released in the investigation file. This means that many important conclusions of the case are still being withheld for use in the legal proceedings. and it is from these forensic results that prosecutors will have to prove in court what happened in the final moments leading to Kamal Cameron Williams' death. By the time the crime scene was cleared, a 31-year-old man would never return home. The death of Kamal Cameron Williams concluded with a lengthy criminal investigation and a murder case still awaiting resolution in court. During the investigation, 3 men were charged with murder and attempted murder. However, to date, the case has not gone to trial and no final verdict has been reached. For the Crystal Palace community, the incident has left many concerned about the possibility of knife violence occurring on a street that is usually busy on a weekend morning. Although the investigation has progressed with charges being filed, many crucial questions of the case remain unanswered in upcoming court hearings. For the victim's family, those questions cannot change the heartbreaking truth. A life has been lost, and the void left by that death can never be filled. Currently, many crucial questions of the case remain unanswered. What really happened on Westo Hill in the minutes before Kamal Cameron Williams was attacked? Who inflicted the fatal injuries? And more importantly, will the evidence gathered by investigators be sufficient to substantiate each charge before a jury? These are questions that can only be answered when the case goes to trial and all the evidence is presented publicly in court. Until then, the Kamal Cameron Williams case remains an ongoing investigation where every new piece of evidence could change how we perceive what happened that early morning. In the justice system, suspicion can spark an investigation, but only evidence can bring the truth to justice.